So today we are starting the Project Soapway challenges for all the weird stuff, the fruits and the vegetables that we've been putting into our soaps. And so this is a soap specific Project Soapway challenge. And we're starting off with my submission to the Project Soapway challenge. And luckily for me, I get to win no matter what because it's my challenge, because this soap is a disaster in every sense of the word, and I will tell you more about my disastrous Project Soapway soap in just a minute. But before I do, hello, I am Mrs. Soap and Clay. Let's make stuff. Just like the street lights lit this town. How's it going, Sudzers? Welcome back to the channel. You are at Soap and Clay, where we make all the soapy things. And as I said, you are here for a Project Soapway challenge. And today, we will be making my Project Soapway challenge soap, and it's not great. It's really not. It's very bad, actually. In fact, now, the brief for the Project Soapway challenge for the soap submissions was you have to use a fresh fruit or vegetable in your soap, and it has to be themed around said fruit or vegetable. So if I look at it, I know what's inside of it. And I believe I gave some restrictions on how many different ways you could use it. Like you had to use it at least 2 or at least 3, all the things ways. And so I did that with mine, and I used watermelon juice within the oils as well as within the traced soap batter. And then I went ahead and put the watermelon rind into the lye solution because I thought, why not? Let's see what it does. And what it ended up doing was it got weird. And so I want to talk about watermelon generally, how it's going to help out with your soap and your experience overall, but also when enough is enough and when you should just not push that boundary too terribly far. Because I did. I went past the boundaries of what a soap will handle with incorporating, a fun additive. And I want to talk about why and what you should do for your watermelon soap should you want to make a delicious, delightful, awesome watermelon soap that we don't eat. So let's get to the video and we will talk all about that, there. Sudzers, welcome to my shame. We are going to be doing a watermelon soap today, and I have done watermelon soaps on the channel probably every year. I would be shocked if I haven't because, it's watermelon season. July is upon us. A watermelon soap is a slam dunk. Absolutely. But here's the weird part. I've never actually put watermelon into the soap. I don't think. I have no memory of having done that anyway. And so what we are going to do today is we are going to lean into all the fresh fruits and vegetables that we have been making and experimenting with for this entire month and some of May and all of the jazz. And we're going to make a watermelon soap, but we're going to actually use the watermelon itself. And so what I have done is obviously I have a fresh watermelon, I have cut it, and I am going to take a portion of the watermelon from inside the actual, meat of the watermelon, and I will be using that to incorporate into, I believe, my oils and into my traced batter. I don't 100% remember. We are going to find out together. It's going to be a good time. And then I am going to be, obviously making the soap and doing the things. And I will then, at that point, for the lye solution, I'm going to make a stock standard lye solution. So just with water, I will be using 2.4 times the water to the lye. And I will be reducing that amount by around 3 ounces. I'm putting in, ultimately, when this is all said and done for the puree for the watermelon, about 7 ounces, I believe. It's important to note the amount of water within all of this because it will actually come into play within this soap and why it became a disaster. We have done tests before on the channel where we have really pushed the limits, like how much water is too much. And I've kind of arbitrarily said there's really no such thing as too much. It's not necessarily true. I think the most that we've ever tested out is like 3.5 times water to lye, all to really just show that really the only thing that you need, remember, within a soap for saponification to occur is for your lye solution to be 1 part lye, 1 part water. So really that 1-to-1 ratio is all you actually need within a soap. And we adjust the water accordingly based on what we want the bar to ultimately do as far as the pour, to make the pour easier. And so you can incorporate more waters for a variety of reasons. The biggest for me is going to be the clays that I put in. So because I use so many clays within each and every batch of soap that I make, I obviously want extra water within there to help keep the batter nice and fluid for more complicated pours. Yeah, and I went ahead and I'm just putting the rind into the lye solution within all of this. By the way, don't know if I've already said that, but I decided, hey, I'm going to do this. Let's see what happens. Let's see, what comes of all of this. Immediately it becomes weird. So what I'm getting is some of the watermelon puree into the lye solution. Because it's not all completely just down to the rind, but whatever's in the rind. So we're going to talk about that as well. Anyway, water content with all of this is very important because ultimately I believe I pushed the limits too far with the amount of water that I could put in. So that is why I am talking about all of that. Now, what I am doing with all of this is obviously I'm going to puree the watermelon to make it easier to incorporate within the oils. I'm reasonably certain I do this within the oils as well as in the traced batter. So ultimately what we are looking at with all of this is going to be, oh gosh, so 10 ounces total of water and 5.46 ounces of lye for this solution. The recipe itself is a 30% olive, 30% palm, 30% coconut, and 10% apricot oil, because we're testing this against all the rest of the bars that we've been using, 5% super fat. And then I put in to the oils an additional 3 ounces. Is that what that's for? While I have reduced the amount of water that I put into the lye solution, I went ahead and I'm adding in total, 8 ounces in total additional water into this while only removing 3 plus whatever is going to come from that watermelon rind. And quite a lot will ultimately end up coming from that rind. So this is where we're really, again, pushing the limits of how much water is too much. And you're going to see what I mean. But for now, let's go check out the pour. Okay, and onto the pour of this, and as you can see, I am putting the about 5 ounces into the oils directly. I'm going to mix them up within the oils, mostly because I want to see just how green I can get the green, right? And also because there was a brief within Project Soapway that it had to be incorporated a number of different ways, and I kind of was a bonehead and chose a fruit or a vegetable that could only really be incorporated one way. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, so there's the watermelon puree. That's kind of all you can put into it. We don't have like a dried watermelon that's going to be good for an exfoliant or you know what I mean? And so I'm like, well, let's just incorporate it into the oils and into the trace batter. And for funsies, let's put watermelon rind into the lye solution. Now I'm putting the kaolin clay into the total oil batch as well. And again, putting the watermelon in the actual juice, the puree into this, I want to see if I can manage to get a green and a white from this anyway, because we have had a number of really fun tests wherein a lye solution or the oils, they look super dark. And then after saponification is complete, after a nice C-pop has been done, everything actually goes very light. And so that's what we are working with here. Now, right now, this looks like it's a really beautiful solution and everything's blended up really nicely. That is not what we are going to be working with once it is allowed to settle, because the watermelon puree itself is primarily water. And so if left to its own devices in a big old pot of oils, it is going to separate out. And so I wanted to give you a side angle of that to show you how it starts separating out. Isn't that delightful? Looks gross. And this is something that you're going to find whenever you're incorporating juices into your oil solution. Anything that has a water content, you're going to end up looking at like, it's going to end up looking like this. Is it a problem overall? Absolutely not, because you're going to do the mixy mix thing. The rind here is weird. It looks kind of like a chili pepper. Not like the red hot version, because I don't like them. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I hate the red hot chili peppers. That's a whole thing. It looks like a green chili, like from Hatch, New Mexico. Like I could just put it into my mouth and eat it. I won't though, because it's been sitting in line doing all kinds of weird stuff. But also to that, I wanted to talk about the smell. We have not really been talking about smells a whole lot, save for the sea moss journey. That was wild and it all smelled bad. But for each and every one of these incorporations that we've been doing for the fresh fruits and vegetables, the soap batter smells terrible. Terrible. The lye solution smells bad. The soap batter smells bad. Carrots were my least fun as far as the smell of the lye solution. I was very, very concerned that it was going to like always smell like that. But after saponification is complete, that smell no longer remains, even in unscented bars. And we found that to be true with the sea moss, and that was also true within all of the fruits and veg that we've been doing too. So lye solution is in. We are doing the thing. And let's talk about what the watermelon rind actually contributed to the lye solution. Well, watermelon rind is comprised primarily of water. It's about 95% water. And so we're going to be putting in a lot of extra water into the lye solution that I had removed water from. Also, there's carbohydrates in it. So it's going to be your glucose. That's about 4%, your carbs. And so we're going to get an extra sugar boost. We would expect the lather to be better as a result. That's kind of it. In addition, there is a fraction of a percent of fiber that's not going to be found within the soap itself because I did strain out the rest of the rind that is still solid. And then just really trace amounts of vitamin C and vitamin A. But again, that's not, it's so negligible. And vitamin C is going to be destroyed during during the chemical reaction with the sodium hydroxide in the water. So that won't matter anyway. Now, pay attention to all of the batter here and how fluid and delightful it is while we're doing all of this. I did just soap this to an emulsion, so we're not working with any sort of traced batter, which is good. It is in solution, and I just want it to stay there. And just pay attention to the overall consistency and texture of the batter as we continue on. Now, when any of these things interact with sodium hydroxide that you're finding in the rind, again, the vitamin C is going to be degraded. It's going to be rendered inert. Again, it doesn't matter. There's not a lot to it. And vitamin A, yeah, it will go through saponification, fat soluble, all the jazz. So watermelon rind, realistically, all it's contributing is a little bit of sugar, so cool, extra lather, and more importantly, a lot of water. Now, what about the watermelon juice that has been within the oils and that I'm going to also put into the trace batter? It's about 90% water. And so we're adding extra water to all of this, which is why I said pay attention, and I think I pushed this envelope too far. And in addition to that, we've got about 7% carbs within all of that. So again, the sugars, the glucose, we're going to be expecting a bigger bubble. And so that's a good thing for sure. As far as the vitamins are concerned, still trace amounts. Not a whole lot of vitamins within watermelon just generally. We have vitamin C and vitamin A. Same thing, vitamin C and vitamin A in these small amounts within a soap. It's not going to provide any real benefit to the skin. And so you just sort of it's a nothing burger. Also pay attention to this green color. I was very surprised after saponification, after CPOP, what both of these greens ended up doing. And also amino acids, some antioxidants, and then trace amounts of your minerals, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. These are all going to be found within the watermelon, but as I said, primarily it's just water. None of these things exist in high enough quantities to make much of a difference within our soaps. And so why would we include it? We would include it for the label appeal. Realistically, make a watermelon soap, you should totally put some watermelon in it. It seems weird to not, you know? Now, I'm measuring this out and you can see we start to get some separation here, but it's not bad. Again, I soaped this to an emulsion, or a near emulsion, and so I would expect there to be some separation going on. And I am putting more kaolin clay into this portion to whiten it up so we can get a nice line for the pulp, or whatever it's called within a watermelon. Somebody will tell me. And yeah, with all of this, again, if you're just primarily contributing water, what do you do in this case? I would say reduce your water amount. I would say soap at 1.5 times the water to the lye if you're going to be incorporating the watermelon juice puree into either your oils or your traced soap. Because right now, as it stands, this is all just a fine process. Everything's working out. There's none problems at all. Where it finally gets to the point of no return is when I add that additional 3 ounces of the watermelon puree into the red portion, which is still about the bulk of the soap, about 60% of the remaining soap batter. I added this additional 3 ounces of water. And it's firming up very nicely within the mold, so that's very, very cute. I cannot wait to show you the swirls that exist within the rind portion and the green portion. Oh my gosh, just did a little drop swirly swirl for that. So cute. It ended up looking so cute. And that was the only part of the bar that looked cute. So, ideally, watermelon juice, it does contain, a lot of beneficial components for the skin, which would be ultimately hydration and the moisturizing properties that you're going to get from the sugars. For us and our purposes, though, what are we reasonably looking at? We're looking at additional water, which should make the pour easier until it doesn't, and also additional glycerin, and sugars, which will make the lather better. So that's it. That's kind of all that you're going to get. So realistically, it's label appeal, but it's good label appeal. So you should for sure include it if you're going to be making a watermelon soap. This is also scented with something watermelon from Sierra Candles, and it's delightful. I'm pretty sure it's from Sierra Candles. I'm almost positive. I've never liked any watermelon from any other soap supplier. It's actually called watermelon candy. So that's it. Now, see how fluid and everything the batter is? It's totally fine. Yep. It's, again, we're putting in that extra amount of the water and the watermelon puree, and it looks like it's kind of fine, All right. It's a thing. Gonna put in the poppy seeds to give it the little thing for the speckles for the seeds, even though I used a watermelon that had like the little white seeds, also known as a seedless watermelon. So that's cute. And yeah, it's still working. It looks like it's gonna be just fine. All the jazz, no real separation going on. And it gets really bad when we pour it in, because what's going to happen to all of this is effectively what I think I have done is, by incorporating this watermelon puree into the soap batter, into the emulsified, well, into this emulsion just generally. If I just use the watermelon puree within the soap, within the lye solution, in place of the water, would have been fine. No big deal, whatever. If I had just used it within the oils and removed a portion of the water, to compare, it would have been fine, I think, or to make up for it, it would have been fine, I think, no worries. It was when I added all of these oils, or all this watermelon puree, into the oils and the trace batter, where everything really went awry. And I do think that's just because there's too much water content in this, because a high water content can absolutely dilute your emulsion and make it really difficult. You see that separation makes it really difficult for the oil and the lye to actually form a stable mixture. And so that excess water is going to start seeping out and separating and doing all kinds of really disgusting things. But in addition to that, because of the sugars that exist, we're also running into the problem of these sugars continuing to heat this. And I soaped this pretty hot. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I did soap this pretty hot. I think I let it get down to 120, which I normally don't do. I usually do room temperature for everything. You can already start to see how everything is seeping out, but in a very interesting way, because it's starting to look like glycerin. It's forming glycerin. It's like a part. And so this is where your glycerin rivers come from. It's all the jazz. And so I'm going to go ahead and pour the rest of this very separated, very not good soap batter onto the top, so I can try to form, a top of the watermelon soap. And it's just going to keep seeping. The longer that it sits, the more that I put on here, it's going to seep out. And it looks oily, right? It's not. It's kind of a byproduct, because again, the sugars are overheating it all, because sugars do exist within all of this. So it's easy to get to the glycerin plus the extra water. And so it's manifesting as, this is essentially glycerin plus water. It's a big mess. It's not a fun time, because we have broken this emulsion effectively. And so we've got weeping, we've got separation, we've got a huge mess. Let's check out what this cut ultimately ends up looking like. Okay, and this is the next day, and it's bad. It's so bad. This has been sitting in the mold for a full day. I usually don't let my soaps sit that long before I unmold them. About 12 hours is my max. And it came out without any problems, for sure, but it is a mess. It is a mess. Now, I did test the pH for this liquid that was all coming off of this. And the pH is just fine, So it's not a lye heavy soap, but people will assume that, oh my gosh, weeping, it's bad. It must be a lye heavy bar. That's not what's going on here. This is, again, the glycerin really separating, the water separating out, and it is a wreck. And the stuff that is weeping from it, it too smells bad. It is not good. I had this very gross smell on my hands this entire time. I hated it. It was not a good time. What is a good time is the bottom layer. Isn't that beautiful? I don't think I've ever done a more perfect watermelon rind. Ever. Ever. So it's kind of heartbreaking that it's on this particular soap. The watermelon soaps that I make over the course of the year, because I have it available in like a bulk loaf option for sale on the website. And so people very frequently buy watermelon soaps. And it's just very disheartening that I make so many of these every single year, and I have never had such a pretty rind on it. And this is the first time I've had my favorite rind, I think, ever in a watermelon soap, and all the rest of it's a big old mess. We can see the tunneling that's existing in the actual pink part where it's very clear glycerin rivers that are forming, which again is a sign that we have too much water, too much liquid within all of this. The emulsion really struggled to stay intact. And so between that and the extra sugars and the overheating, kind of a big old mess. That extra water has to go somewhere. That glycerin is going to form and it's going to go somewhere. And it's just not a good time across the board. So this actually ended up being a couple days before I ultimately decided that it was fine to test. I didn't really want to touch it. And so usually I'll do the test right after I cut for the bubble just to see what it's going to do. I wanted this to lose as much of this extra liquid as much as that it could before I gave it a test. And so this is a couple days after. And so it's still very, very fresh soap, but you can see that bottom layer, it's so gorgeous. Like it's a really pretty smooth bar. This is why I say you can go, up to that 3.5 times water, I think, without it getting too terribly weird. But I think we really pushed the boundary with all of this, with the additional water that was added from the rind and from the 8 additional ounces of effectively water that was put into this as a whole. But look how creamy that lather is. That's a big bubble. Like I like the size of the individual bubbles. Very lovely. The creaminess of this feels delightful. This feels very gentle and lovely on the hands, like it would be great for a face soap for sure. But at what cost? I think I can get this same lather without going overboard with all the additional water from the watermelon puree that I put into these, because ultimately that is one of the ugliest bars of soap I have ever made. Yeah, so across the board, that thing is a mess. I don't know. Ultimately, it is continuing to, it's not seeping anymore. This is about a week, 10 days gone, and it's not seeping anymore. So that's definitely a good thing. But the overall texture and structure of the bar, it's pretty ugly. It looks a lot like the sea moss soaps that I made. That said, those sea moss soaps did eventually cure out and they started looking normal. And so there's still hope for this. As far as the lather test goes, this lather test was done just 2 days after a pour, and it's great. Like already off the bat, like very, very creamy, fun lather for sure. And so yeah, because of all the benefits that exist within watermelon, I would say totally you should incorporate this into your soaps, especially since we all love to make the things that look like watermelon. You should definitely incorporate some juice. You should definitely incorporate that and do that. But as far as the amount that I put and the manner in which I did it, I would say probably not. Let's not go there. Ultimately, I don't think it was the rind that caused this. Because as you could see with all of the batter before I inserted the juice into the traced soap batter, it was completely fine. There were no problems, no separation, no anything. It was when I actually put in those juices into the traced soap batter that I started having a problem. And that's what I have experienced more times than I would like when it comes to incorporating fresh juices or purees into soap at trace, in your trace batter. And for that reason, I don't recommend doing it. Because we are working with juices, you can use that as your water content instead of, actual water. And that's the way that I would recommend doing that across the board. So you're controlling this in every step and therefore, adjusting accordingly as you go. For me, this thing started weeping and getting crazy after the first 2 layers had already been put in and they were great. And so that now sucks. This whole soap, which otherwise would have been just fine and awesome, ended up the opposite of that. And so that would be my recommendation for when you incorporate juices and how. And that is why I've been doing it this way throughout all of this crazy fruit and vegetable juicing journey that we've been doing. Yes. So that's my submission. Again, hopefully you got some good information out of this. And yeah, there's that. It's not the greatest, but you know what is the greatest? The 3 Project Soapway winners that we're going to explore next. And so definitely like, subscribe, get the bell, get notified, because the 3 winners for the Project Soapway submission for the soaps for this round, all so much fun. I love them so much. They did some really unique ingredients, like some really unique fruits or vegetables or whatever, and incorporated them in really fun ways that I wouldn't have thought about. And so I'm very, very excited to be able to talk about all of the different ways that they incorporated their very unique ingredients. And so stay tuned for that. Sudsers, you guys are awesome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. Definitely come back and celebrate all of the awesome that we're going to get from the Project Soapway winners, because we picked them from the Sudsers. That's how you get to do your Project Soapway submissions. So yeah, come back and support all of your friends. That would be excellent. I'm going to go. It's a wild day, but I will see you guys all again tomorrow for another round of Project Soapway Soapy Fun. Bye.